Last panel, but not the least. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit down. Two little business, how do you say it? Two things to say, not related to the next panel. As I mentioned before, the badge, please return your badge at the end of the day. We borrow all these little things from CBC in Montreal, so return them. The survey, if you had a moment to fill it up, just leave it on your seat and we'll pick it up. If you don't want to keep the program as a souvenir, please leave it here, because tomorrow and Friday we have additional workshop and we no longer have booklets. And now I'm going to say just a little thing. Tom is now Jocelyn. Because of a family matter, he had to leave, and Jocelyn Hamilton has agreed on the spur of the moment to become the moderator. So let's welcome our group.
Avengers.
What's the funniest part of that movie?
When Hulk smashed Loki.
My favorite movie is probably Parental Guidance.
And there's also Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, I know one. Wreck-It Ralph.
Because there's race cars in it.
There's like a SpongeBob movie. Yeah, that one.
Barbie Secret Fairy. WALL-E. It's about this robot who lives on a planet who does not do anything except clean garbage.
Oh, Life of Pi. It was about this boy who, his family was moving to, I think, the US. It was in a storm and their ship sank, and he ended up on a lifeboat by himself with a tiger. So he was living with the tiger.
Currently, we're watching Sandlot and Sandlot 2 1,000 times a day.
Pirates of the Caribbean, because they have sword fighting and lots of creations that's like graphics, and it looks really cool.
Ghost Rider, because it's really cool how he can transform into a skeleton that's fiery, and he has this really cool motorbike. He works for the devil, but then also he hurts and gets bad guys.
Teen Beach Movie.
Oh, she really liked that movie with the beach, that beach movie that had the boy from that alley, whatever that. Sorry, I don't even know. But she watched that over and over again. I don't know if she told you that.
I don't like movies.
Why do you not like movies?
I'm scared.
We mentioned the word movie. No. I think when she was young, we decided one of her first movies we thought she could watch would be Wizard of Oz. And completely forgot that the beginning part of The Wizard of Oz is very traumatic.
So thanks very much, everybody. My name's Jocelyn Hamilton. I head up the kids networks at Chorus Entertainment, the programming side. And as was introduced, Tom was supposed to moderate this. Tom McGillis was supposed to moderate this, and I would have been sitting here waiting for a question. But so at the last minute, I've come up with a bunch of questions for my esteemed panel here. And but before I get into that, the sort of reason we had thought about this panel is because last June, Telefilm and Chorus sort of got together and said to ourselves, why is it that there isn't a lot of Canadian family feature films, particularly in the English side of the business, because we'll talk a little bit later about Quebec's success. But why is that when we have such a fantastically successful children's and family business in television, but for some reason in the feature film world, there just really isn't that much brewing? And partly it was over the last few years when my other job was something else, and I was on Movie Central, and we would notice that there just really wasn't a lot of family feature films coming through the door for pre-license and or to be part of. And even in acquisition, there really wasn't that many, with the exception of the big ones that we all know about. So again, we started asking ourselves that question, and then we were on an advisory board for TIFF Kids and kind of asking the same question. And so with the good graces of Telefilm, who sees that same trend, we decided that we would sort of band together to kickstart the family feature film business in Canada. And we believe strongly that there should be no reason why we can't be extremely successful in that area. And it's really just about getting the juices flowing and getting everybody thinking about it. And then over the course of time, because we know these things we can't snap our fingers and all of a sudden there's a bunch of fantastic family feature scripts in our laps. But let's kickstart it. Let's talk about it amongst ourselves in the industry who love this business, love being content providers for kids and family, and doing it in a responsible way and in a way that is entertaining and exciting and profitable. Why not? So, right? Prior to this, I've been pitched a few things along the way, and some people had some great stats. And one of them that was interesting, and we all know family films do well, but one of them came from the Dove Foundation in the US, and they said that family films are 11 times more profitable than films featuring explicit sex and violence, et cetera, et cetera. And it also talked about over the 15-year period, the report found Hollywood produced 123 family films for viewers of all ages, which accounted for just 4% of the top 3,000 films. But they had an average profit per film of $79 million. At the same time, there were 1,533 films aimed at over 18 audience, or 52% of the total, but they made an average of $7 million per film. So it's stats like that that make you kind of think about it, as it is an extremely profitable area of the business, and yet we're just not really in it. So why not? That's kind of the preface of this panel, and let's talk about how we can get there. And we have some fantastic panelists here today covering off all sides of the business. And I'll have them each introduce themselves briefly and what you do at in your various things. But first, I'll start with Mike McGowan at the end, a famous director, writer / producer, and I'll let him introduce himself.
I think is this on? Yeah, this is on. I don't really want to go first, but yes, Jocelyn.
I had no choice.
Exactly. I'm a writer, director, producer. I started, I created a show called Henry's World. The second season, we did the production company. I've done a movie called Vacation with Derek. I did a movie, St. Ralph. Score a hockey musical 1 week, and just recently Still Mine. So sort of worked in television and film, and both sides, writing and producing and directing.
And Eric Tessier?
So yes, I'm Eric Tessier. I'm a director, but I've been mostly concentrating in a horror thriller movie up to 5 years ago, where I got involved in that family kids movie called Pee-wee. It was a fantastic story, and maybe I'll tell you later why I got involved in that and what happened with it. And also I do a lot of television drama stuff. So I'm really, to me, this venture into the family movie world is very, very new. And also I got kids lately, and so that's all a new experience.
We can talk about that later.
But we can talk about that later. But anyway, so yeah, we'll see.
Great, welcome. And Michel?
Michel Pradier, Director of Project Financing at Telefilm Canada. So I'm an early grandfather, so I've been touched by the same thing. And as Justin was mentioning, I'm very eager to hear the panelists about why don't we do more live-action kid films in Canada? Because we got all the expertise is here. The capacity to do it is here. And we made a research at Telefilm that is available on our website, actually, that demonstrates that kids with Canadian consumer, let's call it like that, they like to see more and more film as they get younger. They don't get younger, but excuse my... But the younger consumers are very, very much getting films on all platforms and in theater also. That's why, so the appetite and the consumers are there. The expertise is there, so you just want, how can we gel those two? So.
Mm-hmm. And from the distributor's point of view, this is Mark Sloan.
So I'm Mark. I oversee acquisitions for Entertainment One Films Canada, the Canadian arm of the large studio group that's called Entertainment One. I've distributed Mike's film, St. Ralph. We also distribute a ton of American family films. We recently had Freebirds in the market, Spy Kids, Escape from Planet Earth, Planet 51, blah, blah, blah. And in Quebec recently, Cirilla.
Great. And Sean. And Sean was just recently, what was it, one of the top 10 of people to watch in playback. So, Sean?
I started the publishing company in 2004, publishing comic books, and the pre-production process is very similar to animation, and I've been doing animation since around 2010 started.
But you're also in the middle of?
Yeah. Yeah, so right now we've been raising money for Pixies, and we got that moving forward, and I'm directing and producing an animated TV series called Kagagi for APTN. So 13 episodes, and then a feature film, which we started pre-production, probably May, and are basically right on the verge of entering into production. So.
Great.
Yep.
So, you know, here's a provocative question. So why do we not have more family feature films in English Canada? Why is there seemingly more interest in art films or in the adult side of the film industry rather than sort of audience-driven family films? Why, those of you in the adult side of the film business, why do you think that is non-existent here? Out of curiosity.
Well, I think, first of all, we consider ourselves in the grown-up film business, not so much
sorry.
the adult, not so much the adult film business.
The grown-up business.
You know, I think from a distributor's point of view, historically there were two huge factors. One was, particularly on animated film, was the exorbitant cost of production. And I imagine we're going to get into how that may have changed in recent years, but certainly historically that was one. And the second one was the cost of distribution. Typically, in theaters and cinemas where you have a cinema window that runs for 90 days before DVD, VOD, and other windows, you have to drive, that's the one place you have to drive people to be able to see the film, and that kind of gets its life going. It's very expensive to market those pictures. There's no real model, at least that exists at the moment, for narrow distribution of family film. In other words, you have to go into all the theaters you're ever going to go into on the same day everywhere across the country in English and French. That's largely because of, I think, the nature of who makes the decision, who's going to see what film that weekend. It's often mom who goes to that thing. And in my experience anyways, I'll see if my co-panelists agree, moms don't trust going to the movie theater, putting the kids in the truck and driving the movie theater and parking it, paying for popcorn and getting them all in, if they don't think the kids have a reasonable chance of enjoying it and not complaining when they get there. Anybody who's a parent here knows the horror of going through all that only to hear them whine all the way through the movie. And so I think what happens is they need that assurance that it's going to fit a certain mold and a certain kind of film that they know their kids are going to accept. And those things tend to be this bigger budget stuff, and they also tend to be everywhere all at once. They hear about it on TV, online, and in media, sort of all in one go. And it gets that sense of urgency that you got to go out and see it in the movie theater rather than say, wait for the DVD. So I think that's historical from it.
And so do you not see that same parallel in the grown-up side of the business where it's still about marketing and still about people, like, so why?
It is, but the difference is the narrow cast part that you can do. In other words, some films can, and even some of the best known ones like, Little Miss Sunshine and these things, they actually start on a very narrow basis, particularly an independent film, separate from the big blockbuster Hollywood stuff. And their success level can be, sped up or dialed back according to how the market is reacting. If things are going slowly and they need more time, well, you don't have to expand that quickly, and you don't have to lay in the heavy TV advertising at that point. Only when the film gets to its widest breadth of release and you're confident in future revenues do you throw the marketing in. Family film, well, I mean, we have tracking, we have other ways to test, but essentially, you're throwing absolutely everything you have at it before it opens, all at once, and if it flops, and they flop sometimes, you're done. And a week later, you're out of cinemas. And so the bet on it is much, much bigger on a family film than, say, something more adult where you can, with festivals and other things, take your time.
Right. And do you see an influence, since we're on this topic, of the US on that opportunity in Canada? Like, it's really a North American release.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think part of it is just the fact that so much media spills across this fluid border, particularly in an era of internet. And then there's a second piece, which is, remember, it's not just the advertising. In family film, typically on a wide release, there's a lot of ancillary ways that we reach people. Fast food tie-ins, plush toys, board games, et cetera, that are very much, we see and hear so much American stuff on that. So the 10 times the population means the 10 times the spend. Maybe we spend, say for the sake of argument, we spend $2.5 million marketing a wide release family film in Canada. Well, the Americans are going to spend $40 million. And that 40 mil is going to spill across, and we're going to see it in other places and in other ways that will certainly benefits us here. Yeah.
Right. And so let's talk about Quebec for a second. Because in the French market, it's a different story, a little bit of a different story. And can you explain, and maybe we'll talk about your film in a little bit, but can you explain what the difference is, or what you think the difference is in Quebec as to the success of family films there?
I think similarly than the English market, I mean, there's a lot of very good TV production company in Quebec. And those producers, like most of them, try like Viva Vision, Téléfiction. They put forward like films for kids, live action films for kids, and it's been successful. And it's funny because it's not all the time like a spin-off of the creation they did for TV. It's another creation, but they got the expertise. Like I'm thinking out loud, like a Carmen Bourassa person. Like she got a lot of knowledge about like kids psychology and how to approach or build a content for it. And I think the trick is the content. And on the French market, it's sure that it's a closed market. Everybody say that, but you have to compete with the French version of the Hollywood blockbusters also. So I mean, if it's successful, it's been well written to start with. And a good story is appealing for a kid. I mean, in the previous panel, it's like content. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a lot of special effects and all that. It's sure that kids are kids and they like it, like when the motorcycles, they start firing and everything. But a good story, like there's a lot of popular TV series that are built on simple stories. So if you can recreate something that is as appealing in cinema, I think that's what they succeed in Quebec. And even more now, because with the social media, I mean, those kids, the younger generation, they are very much like what they call the bouche à oreille. The awareness of it, the creation of awareness is very powerful to those social media, and they're very big consumers of those things. So there's something to be done about that.
So let's talk about the success of Pee-wee with you. Do you want to show the clip first? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to talk a bit before because there's a context to be put. But it's true that there's not that many family movies, even in Quebec, there's not that many feature films made. There was this guy called Roch Demers who did The Compte pour tous. Maybe you all know about that. He did one over the other. And then nothing much in the last maybe 5 years or so. And what happened with that particular project is that it started with 3 guys who desperately wanted to tell that story. And the impulse was, I would say, it didn't start like we're going to make a movie for the family. They just wanted to tell that story, and then it happens that it turns out to be more of a family movie. And so that's maybe the major thing about that. But during the whole process, we always question how far we can go, how much we can say. And the story is about kids. It's all playing hockey, and also about the parents. And everybody knows that there can be awful things happening in the arena where the parents fight each other and stuff like that. And we wanted to address that question. And what type of language are they going to be talking? Are they going to swear? Are we going to put swear words in our movie? And such and such and such. And finally, we decided to play very near to reality. And people do swear, not a lot, but they do. And we went all the way because kids are not stupid. We want to talk about that. If everybody is like being all gentle and everything, they will not buy it. So we went for the truth in that. And that's about the clip I want to show to you. And last week, the movie was selected at the Chicago Film Festival, and we received that indication. They wanted us to change the subtitle of a few subtitles because it was not proper. But so the distributor said, okay, we'll change it, and it went through. But it's just it surprised me a lot that they reacted that way, But we went all the way through it, and I'm going to show you a 2-minute clip. It's a bit an example of what's happening. The father really gets very hard on his child, and you'll see how it comes out.
Viens là faire ça. Checkez-moi bien aller.
Lève-toi, innocent! Ah ouais! Lève-toi! Qu'est-ce qui est arrivé, Joe?
De quoi?
T'es tombé, t'es resté à Plavance, à la glace, ça fait rire de toi.
J'ai mal tombé.
T'es-tu fait mal?
Mais non.
Pourquoi t'es resté couché à terre comme un épais? Comme une hostie de tapette? Si tu fais le fif à terre sur la glace, là, ben t'as de l'air d'un fif. Puis si mon fils passe pour un fif, je passe pour un fif moi aussi. C'est-tu clair, ça? T'as-tu compris?
Oui.
Ouais? Le petit nouveau est pas mal plus fort que toi. Va falloir que tu te bottes le cul. Parce que moi, je vais te le botter.
C'est beau, pas.
Va te motiver, moi, tu vas voir. Regarde, on va faire un deal. Je te donne 10 piastres par but. Tu me comprends-tu, là? Plus tu scores, plus tu gagnes. Ça reste notre sacré, par exemple.
Ça veut dire que si je fais un tour de chapeau, ça me donne 30 piastres?
Non, pas 30 piastres. Un tour de chapeau, c'est 50 piastres. Un petit bonus. On a-tu un deal?
Deal.
Tu mets pas de ça à ta main, par exemple?
Yeah, so that's pretty hard when you look at that. That's maybe the hardest scene, but we needed that to, to propel the story further. But my point is that it's not because it's a kids' movie that you have to treat it maybe more padded in that particular situation. If it's justified, it needs to be there. And we always address that project as if it would be my own grown-up or adult thing. There's no difference to me.
Okay. So that's an interesting one, because my next question was going to be what is, and I was going to ask you, Mike, what you think the secret is, or what do you think the ingredients are for a great family feature?
I don't think anybody really knows, or we'd be geniuses all the time. But I mean, I look at sort of St. Ralph, which I think, what was the rating on that? Like 14 plus or something like that? Or it was
PG.
PG-13 probably.
Okay, so 14A. Yeah.
Yeah, and with Score that I specifically made for all ages. I don't know if it was PG or G, and you look at the two of them and you think, like, St. Ralph went all around the world and Score and sort of had success everywhere, whereas Score, they had a big release here, but because it was, I made it for kids and as a general, specifically for all 4 quadrants, but it didn't seem like there was, and Mongrel did a great job releasing it, but even in spite of that, like I live an hour and a half north and it played in Orangeville, and people came to me, when's the film playing? It was like, well, it played last week, and those are, you're just like, yeah. So even with a big release and like an opening in TIFF like that, so I think you look at something like Pee-wee, you're looking at something like Air Bud, or I think if as a filmmaker, as storytellers, it has to be about being true to the story and trying to tell great stories first and foremost. I mean, I look at St. I don't know what you feel about this, Mark, but I look at St. Ralph and I thought, if we had, I question this in hindsight, but if we had toned down just a few things and got a PG rating, would that have really helped us? And I or helped us more, sort of thing. And I didn't even think about it at the time, but.
You know, it's a very good question. And I actually think you bring up a really good point because you said 4-quad movie. And I think that.
I don't know what that means. I just thought I'd say it.
Sounded good.
Isn't it awesome? We've started to parse the idea of family film down into two different categories now. One is the traditional kids film, right? It's usually animated. Maybe if you're lucky, there's a few jokes in there for the parents. But for the most part, it's based on a property or it's got an appeal that's going to, for kids first and parents go with. Then the second group is the St. Ralphs and Scores of this world, which we use that term family co-viewing now. Those kinds of projects that a family can go to together, that a parent can feel comfortable, there won't be awkward things in it that they'll have to explain to their kid on the car ride at home or anything like that, but that also the parent can enjoy on their own level. I think St. Ralph, frankly, in today's world, we would approach it differently than we did. It was a different time then, but we would do it differently then and try to find out ways that we could get parents to take their kids to it, expecting for them to enjoy it as a family. One project we're working on right now is the Brent Butt movie, for instance. And one of the things we did when we did our research was we realized families watched this show together. It was a gentle comedy, and it was on at 8 p.m. and it was on reruns on comedy where a lot of kids were watching that stuff. And so we realized that our market was, we weren't going to market to the kids, but we were going to market to the parents and say, you can bring everybody, you can bring the family to it. He's the same guy you guys sort of laughed at together on TV. And I think one interesting area to look at when we talk about this and we put ourselves up against those giant Hollywood animation budgets is whether or not we can make more films that fit into that family co-viewing category. Suitable for the kids, but not a kids movie.
Well, I think one of the important things in this type of film is these films have to have layers, many layers. Things that are going to appeal to the parents and things that are going to appeal to the kids. And that's what happened when you have that. I think everybody's happy to enjoy the experience. Well,
I think that's a really interesting topic because when we're talking about co-viewing television, it's a very interesting discussion because on the kids and family networks, what we say is the in is with the kid. It starts with the kid and the parents don't mind watching. Co-view on some of our adult, grown-up channels starts with the parent and it's okay if the kids come along. So it's a debate when you're talking about the family features, and you think of some of the big blockbusters. Who in the family is saying, let's go see Wreck-It Ralph? Is it the parents saying, let's go see Wreck-It Ralph this weekend, and the kids come along? Or is it the kids saying, I want to go see Wreck-It Ralph, let's go see Wreck-It Ralph, got to see Wreck-It Ralph, and the parents are like, okay, looks like, it's another Pixar film or another DreamWorks film or another, sure. Because now there's a lot out there to say that might be kind of fun. Because it's two different kinds of films, to do it that way, and which, it's an opinion as to where you're going to get the most audiences.
Well, I mean, Mark brings a good, the point up earlier that if you can start narrower and expand with success, then because you can't compete against a $40 million release in the States. Like, right. you just can't do that. So if you can do something that the adults sort of buy into, whether it's from the festival circuit or critical reviews or whatever, to me, you seem to have a better chance because at least my kids, they're saying, let's go see Wreck-It Ralph or whatever. They know about stuff that I've never heard of, and it's all Hollywood driven. Whereas if you can, it doesn't necessarily need to be small, but we've had success with Canadian films that start with the grown-up or adult.
Lisa, one of the parents in the video initially mentioned Life of Pi as the one that they saw as a kids film, right? And of course it's not, but it's got the animals, got the thing, and it was something that a grown-up could, as I did with my daughter, take her to see this thing and say, it's going to be something in there for you. She didn't nag me in the slightest. She wasn't sort of aware of it, but the experience was really, really positive on both sides. And to your point, it had all those layers that, allowed us both to get something out of it.
Well, I mean, the film that didn't work, but I mean, We Bought a Zoo seemed to be that, I mean, as a Hollywood film that, the kids would buy into it. It didn't really work, and an adult, and hopefully work for the adults as well. But
I suspect around the world that ultimately, though, was still probably a
Did you guys
Do
release
stuff
that one?
No.
You were defending it. I just wanted to go out.
You know, and then it's funny that you brought up in the long haul. So a big part of this side of the industry, in our view, is the long tail. Hence why we as the television networks would want to start to kickstart this, because in the long run, a lot of these feature films, the family feature films, last a very, very long time and still do very well. So, you know, for us, when people ask us, like, so what kind of films are you looking for in relation to this? And so, you know, quick list would be Spy Kids, you know, Freaky Friday, Home Alone, Free Willy, E.T., of course, fantastic, but Parent Trap, Cheaper by the Dozen, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So there's a real array of, like, high-end to lower-end, but those are films that, you know, there should be, that have a simplicity to the actual concept, if you think about it, you know.
High concept, you mean?
It's a simplicity, because you can say it in one sentence quite easily what most of those films were about, right? So Freaky Friday, the mom and the daughter switch bodies. Pretty simple, right? Parent Trap. Again, switching. Switching homes if you were twins and you were separated at birth, and then, you know, you go and switch friends. Spy Kids, pretty simple concept, right? Back to the Future, you go back and you meet your mother, right? So, and then you have to try to get back. So most of those have very simple concepts, but then the story was just so well executed. All those films, I guess what I'm getting to is, all those films still last today. We can still play Home Alone on YTV and it will rate like through the roof to this day. So the long tail is a big part of that. Is there any ingredients that you've seen over time that, I just mentioned one, the simple concept and well executed, but that you can think of as that allows for that long tail? Because I think everyone's after that.
Certainly, I agree with you. That simple concept, or like a high concept, in other words, something wacky that happens that is easy to explain.
Yeah.
You know, without still going on. Obviously, in animation, one of the nice things is there's no issue with language, so exportability goes way up. I'm assuming your stuff must get sold into other in other territories, and what happens? They just dub it locally, I guess.
They dub it locally, so you basically sell your movie or your TV series to a territory. And then they're responsible for the language translation, all that. So I always find it funny, like you have DreamWorks' big movie, Megamind, had Brad Pitt in it. Most people don't even know Brad Pitt was in Megamind. And then it goes, I just met with a German producer, AFM, on the weekend. He's like, oh, really? And they lose all their marketing from the voice casting because it's dubbed into German.
That's a really good point. So. Yeah.
I also think that to the earlier point we're making here, there has to be that sort of, I think, sales ability on both levels. Assuming that we're not going to be making, you know, $100 million productions here, that we're going to have to work on a level where we're going to be able to market to different segments effectively, because we're not going to be able to just, you know, raise awareness just with little kids and that's it. And then I think we should also talk about affordability in the budget. One of the interesting things, and I'd love to hear from other people on this, which is the degree to which the dropping prices in animation mean that we can do things that we never ever could have dreamed of doing before. I saw Steve was in the audience. We did a tour of ARC Studios recently, and we were watching what those guys are up to there and the price they're doing it for. And you're seeing these things that I always associated with only the most mega studio stuff happening at a budget that means that it's going to be Canadian content. It's happening here in the country. And so I think that's another piece that's emerging now. We don't fully understand what the potential is, but it certainly is going to be a piece of the puzzle.
Well, that's a great segue into Sean. Really impressed with something that Sean, Pixies is his film, but one of the reasons my eyes kind of bugged out was the size of his budget and because he was basically just saying, I'm going to do it. So introduce your show, and we'll show maybe a little clip. It's not a clip, it's your promo, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And so I started, like I said, in 2004 publishing comics, and it's kind of funny when I hear these big budgets and everything. Marvel Comics is a fairly large publishing company, and you know, for me to kind of go literally dollar for dollar, month to month for almost 10 years this next year, I've been somewhat, I guess, competing against them, but I don't really see it as competition. I'm doing something much different. And going back to the broadcasting, the opposite's narrowcasting, I have a fairly built-in comic book base and fans. We go Comic-Con every year, and I'm kind of taking that approach to animated films. And the technology is, I mean, with all due respect, our fidelity compared to what you'll see here at Simius 1, when you actually put it side by side with Toy Story, not story, not anything, just the actual fidelity, what we can do is pretty amazing. And even this is old. About a month ago, we started doing subsurface scattering. So if you basically hold your hand up to the light, you can kind of see through parts of your flesh. So we've incorporated that into all our models. And so they'll actually have layers of, we've incorporated subsurface scattering, which was brand new in Ratatouille, Pixar. I don't know how many years ago, I guess 7 years ago. Now we're doing it. So the technology is changing radically. So Pixies, very quickly, this is somewhat ironic. I started directing this movie, Pixies, and it's about a guy named Joe Beck, and you might even see some similarities between him and me. In the movie, he breaks his leg. And so about a month ago, I started sitting there like, oh my gosh, I am Joe. So, and I found a penny today. So I haven't seen a penny in about 2 months, so picked it up. So we'll see if it's good luck. Very quickly, Joe's the story. Pixie's the story of a guy named Joe. He inadvertently destroys a pixie village. The king does not like this, puts the pixie curse on Joe. So these little creatures, pixies, are about the size of Bumblebee, put a curse on him, and they set up like Rube Goldberg devices that create a lot of squash and stretch animation opportunities and painful experiences for Joe. So we did this as a short film, kind of a promo, proof of concept more than anything, because people kept telling me, you can't do that, it's impossible. So this is what we did.
Before we say, what is the budget on it?
Can you say that? Yeah, right now, honestly, about 1.5 million.
So you'll get it.
That's with the tax credits and everything.
But delivered for 1.5.
Delivered 1.5, and so right now, honestly, the biggest head scratcher I have is casting. We were mentioning casting like Brad Pitt and stuff. A big part of this, like the P&A is one thing, but to bring in like any actor, like we've approached what I would consider a huge rate, because voice actors generally only work 4 hours in the day, and so we had the wonderful Carrie-Anne Moss, who was awesome on a previous film I did. She worked a day and a half, and going forward on Joe, for me to cast Joe has been a lot, and I offered back end, box office bonuses, executive producer credit, every possible back end imaginable, and a very good upfront fee for 6 hours of work. And yeah, the casting is mind blowing. So that's kind of the biggest bump. Animation's a big one, and then the other thing, which I have to be very careful on, Katzenberg was talking about DreamWorks. They spend around $50 million continually changing their ideas and improving them. I was mentioning this earlier. I gotta be like a sniper, like one shot, one kill. I can't, once we kind of make a decision in storyboards, I gotta live with that decision for 2 years. And if I change my mind, the cost just goes up exponentially. And I joke around with people like an engineer or something. It's like kind of building the foundation of your house. Oh, it'd be nice, maybe a bathroom over here. We've done the foundation, like what? And it gets out of control very quickly. So, one shot, one kill. So that's Pixies.
be a little late. Yeah, it happened again.
So it's just interesting because we have this view that every animated film has to be $100 million, and yet, you know, it's possible to be doing it for less. So, but it was an interesting conversation that you and I had, Mark, about what the expectation is in the business. That if you're under a certain amount, then it can't possibly be good enough. Right? Yep. So can you elaborate a little bit on that? Well, it's just interesting.
You know, it's old-fashioned, but you know, I just came back from the American film market in LA. And the budget question is still the first thing where I find myself asking it, even though I know the answer, and people feed it to you all the time. You judge a little bit based on the budget. You say in your head, there's no way you can pull it off, you know, for that amount of money. So I think one of the things is probably a education process between filmmaking and technology to ensure that the filmmakers know exactly what kind of things are at their disposal. Even in the live action world, and you brought up a lot of those high concept ones, well, they all have one thing in common, which is there is a special effects component to all of those things. In the old days, they were, Mike can tell me a little bit more exactly what the technique would have been to have two guys talking to each other, but it's become much easier to do that now than it was to have, like, say, the same person, inhabiting the body and talking to each other. So I think one of it is there's a technological piece that we have to get more comfortable with and understand how can we deliver high concept stuff on a budget. In other words, still be able to do something in the, say, $6 to $15 million range, but deliver high enough. And remember, audiences, and particularly kids, are very savvy to what things should and shouldn't look like. So to ensure that we're able to deliver the highest quality, but at a price that is now within reach. Is that accurate on the sort of special effects side?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, computing goes down, so special effects costs go down. I mean, you think of a helicopter shot now, it's a drone and a GoPro if you want it. No, but I mean, you can get amazing shots, and if you incorporate that into filmmaking, I mean, remember with 1 week, even though this isn't a kid's film, we thought the budget would originally be $7 or $8 million, and we realized we could make it in this window for under $2 million. And so we just completely redid our production model, that we had a very small unit, we could travel across the country. And I think if, like you're saying, Sean, if you sort of say you can do it in a way that's very cost effective and you have a good story, then I think you have a chance to compete. I mean, there's lots of examples of that, of films that, you know.
Yeah, and I think, so for me, I always think it comes down to the story. I'm glad you brought that up, because if it's a great story, and you think of even some of these, I mean, some of them, you know, the earlier versions, maybe they got better as their sequels came out, but some of them are not all that great looking, right? But they had great story, and the effects maybe sometimes in the earlier days weren't all that fantastic, but they had a great story that was compelling, and kids and families love to watch it. So I always feel like if we had a great story, we could make it for less. So it's,
and I think there's another
can
piece
we lie?
Too. There's, well, no, I think that I think you can, but I think the reality is that the world, the buyers and sellers are catching up with what the filmmakers already know, which is there's a new way to approach this stuff. The second thing I think we should touch on is the question of talent, because you brought up the Brad Pitt voice thing. But one of the other realities, particularly with family co-viewing and with kids' films, is you don't actually need gigantic stars to drive in the same way that you do for wide release grown-up movies. We're doing a project right now, a kid and polar bear movie called Midnight Sun. And as we were going through the casting, we were talking about the large names and the smaller names, and we kind of realized TV names were going to work. This is one of the few arenas where TV names actually could be just fine and work well for you. People recognize them, they know it, they trust. You know, you have to get the right faces, and they trust them. You know, a good example in the States, I think, is Helen Hunt as an actress, who for so many years could fill the family film arena. She crossed over nicely from TV, and she filled it and was affordable. Didn't cost $750,000, which is often at a point that's out of reach, you know, for typical Canadian production that wants to pay an actor $150,000. And so I think we do have an opportunity there to recognize that recognizable talent, but not necessarily gigantic talent, can help drive a theatrical presence. And still keep it within what you're talking about, you know. And if you go back to those old John Hughes movies and stuff like that, maybe John Candy movie, you know, but they weren't like, you know, Uncle Buck, for instance, was John Candy and some kids, and that was really, that was the main thing.
Yeah.
And I think casting is also, but I think it's easier these days because the prices have gone down. Actors, the divide between television and film is almost gone for a lot of actors right now. And if they like the project, we found in casting that you'll get actors to do it for the price if they like the project.
We should separate this from Quebec, by the way, where there's a well-established star system, and much like the UK, you guys correct me if you disagree with this, but people cross very easily between television and film and back and forth, and people are totally comfortable and easy with that. And that must make casting.
Yeah. There's no difference. Yeah.
And so let's talk about marketing a little bit, because I do feel like it's tough because usually we're going up against things that have billboards everywhere, and they can. One of the reasons we wanted to get involved is because we do have a large megaphone, and we can help with promoting a film once it's about to go into release. But there must be other ways with social media and with tease campaigns and with tease strategies that wouldn't cost us $40 million in today's day and age. Are there examples, perhaps, maybe in Quebec or in other areas where there has been a way to promote and market that isn't going to cost us $40 million? Or is that something we really need to have as part of our strategy moving forward?
But I think it exists already, but it's not maybe exploited to the degree it should, especially in the kids, because in live action, you're right about the casting and situation in Quebec. But the storyline, if it's a kid story, not a totally like a co-viewing, but like a kid, like the first layer must be the kid, that the kid must be interested to that stuff. If you add layers that interest his parents and all that, good. But for the kids to start a conversation on social media and tell the other kids and tell their own influencer to go around the planet or around your geographical area, it's something that have to be developed. And I think in that storytelling, it's something that have to be nurtured or help in the sense that development of that stage, or because we're saying why there's not enough. Maybe it's economic tradition that we don't go that far because we think it's expensive and all that. But we lost up to a certain point in feature film the capacity to write such stories. It's now in TV. In TV, they're very good at those things. So they have to translate. Those talent must migrate or must be helped to migrate to have enhancement to do that art, because storytelling for kids is the key to generate those things. Like E.T. is a very simple concept, like those eye concept stuff. Maybe we can do a lab or to stimulate that creation type of eye concept. It's for me, it's primarily the thing to do.
I also think on the marketing, well, actually, I don't want to dismiss your very first point, which is there is a partnership aspect that I think we have to embrace. We do it okay, I think we could do it better, which is the partnership between distribution, telefilm, and broadcast, to bring together all of the assets and figure out ways to get our awareness of the project into the market earlier. Because one of the, I think the other truisms with marketing family film is you need long lead times. You have to start building awareness way in advance of what you might do with something that was appealing to a more grown-up audience, because part of that sort of acceptance thing I talked about at the beginning also comes over time. You've heard about it, there's lead up. Opening is something that's been built up to over a period. So for instance, all the big family films in the States have a couple teaser trailers and a trailer that you see in cinemas, right? It just doesn't come one day, oh, Despicable Me is opening. You've seen it teased a full year ahead, right? Usually the milestones being, summer, like Summer Silly Time, which is May to June and July, American Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? When the family films. So any film you go see this Christmas, there will be the July movies, and even as late as the following Thanksgiving movies will be advertised on those things. We're so late off the mark so often in CanCon.
But Mark, what you're saying is funny, because that's exactly what my distributor did with Pee-wee. There was a preview like 6 months in advance, and then he literally flooded everything. The movie came out on 90 screens, which is huge, in Quebec. And it was all over the place, and we took the crew and we traveled all over the place. So it was more of a traditional model, I would say, and then word of mouth.
But you started early. I mean, that's...
Yeah, but that's... I just want to confirm that.
And your belief is that worked? Is that
well,
what
it
you're
did
saying?
work
It was
for.
helpful for you.
Well, the film has to find its audience for sure, and it did. So I'm very happy for that. But I guess it works. I guess. I mean, I'm not distributor, right?
How long did Pee-wee stay in the theaters?
And also it came out in Christmas, like the 20th of December, which is kind of not a place where you're fighting against everyone. But it stayed like for maybe 2 months, three months. I don't know. It went on. Yeah.
That's
Yes,
a
this
long
was
time.
cool. Yep.
But that's interesting. So let's talk about that strategically. If we were to bring a non-blockbuster family film to the market, you know, my immediate reaction is you should go when there's no family films, so that you can, because parents are always looking for a film to bring their family to. So it feels like March, you know, there's times of the year where there's like nothing in the theaters. Is that not a good time to try to get in with something?
Well, the key is that we've learned, even more than seasonality, it's about the spacing between the films. Because, of course, you don't take your kids to 2 movies in a weekend. And sometimes you don't even go 2 weeks, you wouldn't even go 2 weeks in a row.
Because it costs a lot.
It costs a lot. One of the truisms also is, if the market hasn't had, and by the way, this applies to other genres like horror and stuff too, the market is always ready for something it hasn't had in sort of a certain period of time, like 6 weeks. If there hasn't been a family film in the market for 4 or 6 weeks, you have a much softer landing than if there's one that's just about to bin, or also have to say if there's one coming next week. So it's not a strategy to sneak in a week before Despicable Me 2. Parents will wait for Despicable Me 2 to come.
Yeah.
But definitely, and that time is often February, March, end of September, later part of August, where there just isn't, it's not a traditional time to go because it isn't the biggest movie-going time of year, but, and particularly so if your kids have been locked up in the house for a long time, if it's a family film and it's the other acceptable and you've heard of it and you're aware of it and you got to get them out of the house, you'll go.
Yep.
Even if you're not so sure it's going to be good or not good. So one of the realities is a good family film that falls on the heels of another one can do be a lot less successful than the one that's maybe not such a great movie but comes where they've got elbow room on either side of it.
So timing, I mean, you know, you would be able to look out into the future and decide when you're going to release something like that based on what people have said their release dates are. But sometimes release dates change, and then all of a sudden you'd be stuck exactly a week before.
You do. So you have to be a little flexible. What I will say, one of the pluses of us getting involved in this arena is that family film is one of the least jumpy of dates. Okay. Because again, for the reasons we talked about in these mega films, when you're going to commit 50 million plus into a marketing campaign, you stake out your territory like you're like a behemoth, right? You tie in the McDonald's piece. Remember also all of those tie-ins in the States, like the quick service retail and all those ones, they plot them out a year in advance as well, and they're segmented. Like they never have 2 at once, right? So if Subway is doing Shrek, whatever we're on, I don't know, 8, whatever, then that's going to stay, and they're going to stay in that for the purpose of that window. So we have an advantage, which is we're playing in a game where when we find some real estate, it's probably a little safer than many other genres
safer
anyway.
to stick.
To stick, yeah.
But I'd like to add something, is that we have to be also self-confident in the story that we want to tell. It's not true that it's only the US big thing movie that are going to be appealing to the kids. I think we also have things to tell them, story to tell them, and we should believe in that and just go for it. I mean, I don't see why, you know. And I have a bit of a problem with, you know, you said about the high concept or simple ideas. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit, I'd be a bit careful about that. You know, when you say that Back to the Future is a simple concept, I think it's more the opposite of that. It's kind of a complicated thing. What I want to say is that it's not because it's for kids that it has to be simple, or no, we have to tell them stories, you know, and believe in that. And but it's for a creator points of view, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not the business guy, but let's believe in what we have to say and tell, and let's do it, you know.
Yeah, yip, yip. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is an interesting panel because we are talking about both creative, what works, and the business of it. Yeah. Because, you know, if you're going to kickstart this side of the business, you know, the thing that we want to be careful of, and certainly Michelle and I have spoken of this, that the first one out of the gate has to succeed, or, you know, then we won't have people believing. So we're really trying to have these open dialogues to make sure that it succeeds, so we can continue and build and build and grow and grow. So talking about all those pieces, quick service, you know, you got to talk about it, or else, right? or else the potential is that we hide in the sand, you know?
There's interesting about Pee-wee and about others like live action in Quebec that for the casting purpose, like for youngsters, like they start like contests, like much before the shooting of the film, like to use all the social media, the radio network, the TV network, and to go into the region and to looking for young actors that are going to play in that hockey fashion. And so in a way you looking for your casting, but you're building your audience already because you're going all across the province, all across the territory. You cover everything, so everybody's aware of that's coming, and it's even almost 16 months before the release of the film. I mean, it's a very interesting way of doing things.
It's a great strategy, yeah. Ken.
Yeah, you're with Chorus, you're a major broadcaster, and we're talking about feature film.
Yeah.
If we look at the Canadian, sorry, thank you. If you look at the Canadian experience, we do have great successes in television, and they travel the world. We've built brands with those TV shows. What's your view from, from E1's point of view of taking some of the successful Canadian TV series that already have a built-in audience and a platform to promote it across Chorus's assets and the movie channels and whatnot, to do films based on those series? I mean, I think that's a path. I mean, we saw the Moshi Monster presentation. They have a huge built-in audience. Interesting that they're only getting a UK European launch before North America because Canada is not big enough. They need the US before Universal will do it. But opportunistically, I mean, that seems to be a direct path for us here to explore.
I think there's a two-part answer to that. One is on properties that are very Canadian nature, in other words, that haven't been exported outside of the country, I think it's a very doable thing on the right budget. In non-kids films, we've certainly, as I mentioned, the Brent Butt thing we have going. We've done, of course, we're about to do our third Trailer Park Boys movie. I mean, there's an opportunity to do this stuff, but you have to do it at the right price because you know you're not going to have an export market, significant one beyond perhaps Netflix, to recoup your money from. I think even more intriguing, because we're so good at exporting our TV around the world, is whether or not there are those properties we could be developing into feature film for export, right? I mean, there's a huge opportunity there to build larger budget stuff and bigger budget stuff. We'll still launch it like we're talking about here in Canada, but if we could export it and potentially do day-and-date North America-wide releases, then we'd really be moving up to the next level.
Interesting. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi. First of all, I wanted to say how exciting it is that this is happening, that Chorus, that you're working with Telefilm, because I think there's so many of us who are really excited to see what comes out of it. So I just wanted to know a few more details about how that's going to work. You said is there an initiative that you're launching, or?
Well, yeah, we've sort of announced a family feature fund, which is part of the larger Telefilm funding opportunities. So the idea is, it's a production fund though, so you have to have a finished script. So again, kickstarting this to get to a finished script. We've had 17 submissions so far, and hopefully it will continue on. Right now we're at the stage where it's that fine line between an MOW and a feature film that is releasable. So it's not that there haven't been feature-length movies done in this country. It's really just it's the release aspect of it, being big enough to be, and a big enough story, and a big enough of a film to be released. So we're at that stage, but again, with the feedback we can give everybody on and again, it's a fine line between an MOW and what we would consider feature releasable. So we're at that stage, and we welcome any final, they don't even have to be necessarily, final scripts, but they have to be at the stage where it's a finished script.
How do you draw that line? You're talking about MOW.
Well, it's funny because sometimes.
Well, what's the?
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm curious.
It is hard to. It's hard. It's a hard thing to verbalize, but you can.
But it's the richness, it's the nature of it's the size, not I mean, it have to be releasable in a theater. I mean, it have to have those picture value, the richness of the cinematography to be enhanced on big screen. I mean, it's sure that it could go from a big screen to a smaller screen, but not the contrary.
Yeah.
An act breaks every 8 minutes, right?
Pardon me?
For MOWs.
Spoken like a true writer. Any other questions? I have no idea what time it is, so.
Oh.
Oh. Okay.
Let's have a drink.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to ask, well, a couple of months ago, a Mexican movie was released in the States. It was called Instructions Not Included. And it's made almost $100 million on a $5 million budget because it was targeted towards Latino audiences, Latino family audiences. So I was thinking, do you guys think that it could be another strategy in Canada to target a movie to an audience or a minority that might feel underserved in that regard? Like, to get a feature film?
If the right script came along, absolutely.
Okay.
Right?
I would say we had a hockey movie last year called Breakaway about a Sikh hockey team that was set here in Toronto. Did almost $1 million at the box office, which for any Canadian film is a great number, and this was a modestly budgeted one. And I think it fits the bill of what you're talking about, which is made for a price where even if you only get the target community to come out to see it, it's still viable and has export sales opportunities, because of course that film was able to sell to India and the UK. So I think, yeah, it's definitely a strategy for sure.
I thought it did way more than $1 million in box office.
What do you want?
That's
good.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a hit for sure.
It was a hit. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much to my esteemed panelists. Appreciate it.
That wrapped the day. Thank you very much, everyone. And I would like to you to help me to give a big round of applause to. Wait a second. First and foremost, Lynn Cote. And I would like to thank our volunteer from Centennial College, Emily, Suzanne, Augustin, Claudia. Thank you very much. And I invite you all to come for a drink and meet you tomorrow at CBC. The location tomorrow is CBC on Front Street. We will meet in the atrium for people who have signed in. It will be easier for you to get in the conference center of CBC if we meet in the atrium. You'll see the YMA banner like this. Thank you again. Have a nice evening.